So my name is Anniina Suominen. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Art. I'm also the head of the art education program, and a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about today is more so about the field than the program, because it is something that I'm very proud of. I'm proud to serve this institution in both of these positions, as a professor and as a head of the study program. So the title of my talk today, Art Education Towards Greater Equity and Diversity. We are very much not like some of the notions that people might have at this point still, that we train art teachers who then train basic skills in arts. And our field is not so much skills oriented anymore, as we address a lot of the issues that are very relevant to contemporary society. And thus the name equity, or the towards greater equity and diversity. It's also, we have a very strong emphasis on service, serving society, serving the communities around us. And here, for example, I don't typically show photos of myself, but seems to be the theme now. I'm cleaning an urban alley where the land used to be very toxic, and individual artist efforts have reversed the land so that it's clean enough now for vegetables and flowers to grow there, and for example homeless people, I shouldn't say unemployed, but homeless people reside there and can enjoy it. I'm also down here, the little images, I'm working with little children in a preschool setting, and it's a hybrid combination of a regional museum and a zoo and historical museum, and I help them integrate some of the arts into their curriculum and practice. All that being said, as our position as educators located in the intersection of education, the arts, and the rapidly changing society is rather unusual, or maybe not so unusual, within the great structures of Aalto University. I think I could first talk about a little bit about what art education actually entails today in more detail. In the art education study program, we train professionals who work in leadership positions in the art and education fields, as well as in positions relating to these two. Interdisciplinary and inter-institutional collaborations are part of our everyday functions, as we work in close partnerships with several universities in Finland, with numerous schools, museums, cultural institutions, individual artists and researchers, and we are accountable, among other institutions, to the Finnish National Board of Education. We're literally partnered with departments and universities in all sections of the world, and our presence on international venues is constant and noticeable. 4 of my colleagues are currently taking a Finnair flight to Portugal, and I'm catching on to them in Frankfurt. My layover is shorter, so we are constantly traveling and making sure that we know what's happening in the field and that the world knows what we're doing. Finland has one of the top compulsory educational systems in the world, and according to many recent bestsellers and scholarly studies, we educate some of the smartest kids in the world. Although I don't necessarily like the terminology smartest kids, we do definitely educate children who are very creative thinkers and good problem solvers. The art education program here at Aalto, with its 100-year legacy, we turn 100 this year, prepares these educators, art teachers, and researchers who significantly contribute in educating these smart kids who will become the future thinkers, innovators, leaders, and scholars. This is an important point, as the role of professional arts educators and their respective programs rarely gets the acknowledgement in the media and scholarship it deserves. This, of course, is not just a great joy, but a responsibility that requires a vision far into the future. And that also dominates, this responsibility dominates everything we do. Everything we do as educators balances at least the elements of education, art, and research. These parts are never separate or contemplated in isolation, but always balanced in their complexity within the constantly changing local and global context. As a scholar, I always and simultaneously balance these aspects of our profession. Whether I teach, engage in community projects or research, provide expert advice, evaluate student work, attend art events, or make seemingly mundane decisions about the smallest details from word choices to reading lists for the students, I always have to consider and contemplate the impact my actions have on a larger scale, socially, culturally, pedagogically, and scholarly. Thus, I'm never a researcher or a writer without the responsibility entrusted in me as an educator. Our students also face this challenge. Throughout the program, they are asked to grow and evolve as educators and arts professionals responsible for acting in the greater good of their students and society at large. This is not an easy task and process to undertake. This responsibility requires engagement in constant critical self-reflection and needs to result in carefully considered activism towards what one considers to be a positive contribution to the community and society. Again, it's also a great responsibility that our students undertake. I'm going to remember to do that. Although not limited to these themes, several concepts are currently strongly present in art education scholarship. Understanding and developing education in relation to social media and technological advancements, as these rapid advancements have a direct and complex impact on arts, learning, and education. Contextual specificity versus globalism, that meaning that what is meaningful in art and education within specific, if it can even be defined, context. Social justice and identity politics, for example, sexual orientation, equity and diversity education, institutionalism and power, body politics, and environmental justice. Connections between public and institutional education and art, as the concept of learning and art changes, so does the context of learning. The field of art education does not adhere to specific or even several dominant paradigms or schools of thought. The diversity in the field has created opportunities for alternative approaches to research, education, and art to gain impetus. On the other hand, it has arguably made room for certain extremist and traditionalist orientations. For example, right-wing nationalism, conservative assimilation politics, consumption-based egocentrism, nationalism, empiricism, and positivism to advance or dominate in many contexts. Regardless, during the past 2 decades, we have witnessed a diversification of exhibited and funded artistic practices, while we have also observed an increase in political and sociocultural crisis, which has often led to violent conflicts. Art has a tremendous potential to address the most critical issues cultures, societies, and individuals cope with. Embedded in the artistic practices is knowledge and awareness otherwise inaccessible. We are far from tapping into the central role arts could play in helping communities face the great environmental crisis, the marginalization and discrimination of all minorities, the new forms of colonialism facilitated and orchestrated by governments and corporations, etc. Utilizing this powerful position, the potential the arts and education through and with the arts have in impacting people through senses, emotions, bodily, cognitively, and spiritually creates a valuable platform for interdisciplinary collaborations. And this is part of the direction and greater vision that we assign to. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about what I specifically do or believe in. As is stated in the slide here, I have 2 significant commitments that I've made to myself and my work. that guide everything that I do. My scholarship, including teaching, research, service, administrative work. My continued enthusiasm for exploring modes of knowing, understanding, and communicating in, with, and through the arts. Who we are, how we know, what can be known and communicated in, with, through the arts. And the second commitment is my passion for advancing research, arts, and education towards more equitable practices. Through these two umbrella dedications, my research, teaching, service, and artistic practices are intertwined and tightly linked by addressing the larger philosophical questions related to ontology, epistemology, and pedagogy as ethical commitments for continued questioning and revising of beliefs, thoughts, and action. Essential to my work through is exploring artistic knowing, being and education, meaning to explore the notions, concepts, and conventions of research practices and institutional structures and pedagogy in arts and education to actively seek meaningful alternatives. This umbrella position continues to align and frame everything that I do. In this search to continue questioning and to find alternative forms of research, teaching, and mentorship, I draw from diverse fields and traditions such as arts-based educational research, artistic inquiry, what we call artography, performative studies, critical geography, activist cartography, urban and emotional mapping, critical visual and sensory ethnography, advancements in visual sociology, cultural studies, and anthropology, combined with new movements in contemporary art practices and philosophy. Oh, these are taken by teenage immigrants. All of my research, teaching, and service to the university and community attend to human rights, equity, and social justice in art, education, and society. True to this stance, I strongly believe in collaboration and interdisciplinary work, projects, and research. For the past decade, I have researched non-contextual formations and articulations of identities. My goal is to understand the experiences and educational needs of diverse learners, such as students with immigrant and refugee backgrounds, to improve teaching practices and educational experiences for all students, to inform policies and public perceptions, and to find ways to communicate diverse human experiences in a format accessible to broader audiences. I also continue to explore the notion of humanity, experiences, identities, subjectivities, and positionalities through concepts such as urban decay and materiality, sacred places, and subjectivities constructed in relation to environmental, human, and animal grace or disgrace. Equally related to equity and justice, I study, create practice-based curricula, and try to find ways to advance the agenda of environmental justice and radical democracy through art and education. And this is the last one. And then finally, one of my larger, longer-term projects has been to research gender, learn gender roles and socially constructed social roles and equity in related to academic practices and education for women especially. And then finally, in all my work, I strive to balance critical inquiry with artistic, holistic, and intergenerational and embodied knowledge to encourage personal and shared desires towards transformations of perspectives. That's it.